friends, thank you for joining us this evening for the Fight or Flight podcast, where we bring in interesting, creative people who have faced adversity to find redemption and resurrection to points of greater accomplishments. I am thrilled to introduce my brother from another.
Hey.
Dennis, what's happening, man?
Oh, doing my thing. Thanks for the beautiful introduction. It was the words were a little bit bigger than the person, but nevertheless.
Well, let's lean into that. First, I got to thank you. We're at the Karma Train Digital Studio at an undisclosed location.
Very undisclosed.
I can see Toronto from here, so I won't give anything else away, but I know if there are any big issues in the country, I'm just going to swim across that lake.
Did you hear that supersonic jet sound that just flew over us?
I did. What was that?
Another clue.
Another clue? Okay, there we go. Well, friends, why Dennis today? Dennis has had a very remarkable career, and my brother, I'm grateful to have you in my circle. It's been over 20 years.
Got it.
Dennis has run 80 retail locations in the apparel industry that has generated over $28 million in gross revenue. A single store location, which set trend, vibe, and lifestyle. Consumer product goods generating $15 million of business and managing 30 employees, and now a proprietor of 6 specific locations that generate about $9.5 million in annual turnover, also in consumer product goods, in a category called retail, where everyone in the world is saying it's dead. And
brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar, thank you.
Right.
Exactly. And you stand as the example of how it's being done well. But independent of these business accomplishments, I know you got rooked in business, and there was a multi-million-dollar payout that got pulled from you due to forces that were beyond you. And you've referred to that as a ring of fire, and we had conversations when the shit hit the fan and this was going down. And I'd like you to lean in. I mean, what went down? What did you learn? And how did you get the strength to come back from the nastiness of that?
Yeah. It's fun because, the Ring of Fire, I'll get into it a little bit more in a minute because I love talking about it. It's really cool because I think it's very important for especially young people to hear about it. But I always love how life moments help you coin phrases, So look at the Ring of Fire is one of
Johnny Cash.
Yeah, that's right. The other thing that kept popping in my head is when you were talking about this is what you were referencing, the situation where I had I had a traumatic financial experience. It really, the phrase that I coined from that was I didn't recognize I was working with a financial predator, and and some people might say, well, that's a pretty strong word, but it's very appropriate.
What is a financial predator?
Well, I think there's business people that make money, build wealth, generate profits, that are actually doing something that can have a positive effect. They're bringing value to the enterprise, the people working within the enterprise, the community, and things as such. And a financial predator tends to go into situations and turns a profit for themselves without bringing value around. And they're kind of the only one that walk away with the value.
Got it.
And the word predator certainly has
some bad connotations.
Pretty intense connotation.
Yes.
And I think and really I stand by it. I think that it's appropriate because people put their heart and soul into things, and one person walks away with the value, and it's just
because of greed, because of selfishness. I mean, what is it?
I love that question. Super cool. I think a couple of things. I think lack of confidence. I think those people don't really think that they could bring enough value and end up with some value themselves. So they just it's greed, but it's confidence. It's like, okay, well, the only way they just feel like the only way they're going to walk away is if they're the only ones walking away with it.
So they don't. Is that a cash grab or is that a power play, or what is the dynamic?
Both.
And maybe can you frame it a little bit more so our listeners?
My circumstance?
Yeah.
Sure. This person really practiced this routine. I was probably, maybe the 20th person that he had done it to at that point. I think the person probably has done it another 20, 30 times. Wow. I think at that moment, my scale was the largest, or it might have been. I think it was. I think that a number of people, a lot of those people are in my network now. There's almost, I'm almost embarrassed to say, support network of people that have been victimized by this.
You said support, not class action. So I appreciate the way you framed it.
Sure.
What specifically happened just to frame this?
Well, I started developing a brand, which was a retail brand, retail brick and mortar brand, which had some sub brands like product brands within it. And from the ground up, my wife and I developed this business financed by this gentleman and, some of his support systems. And when it started to go to incentivize us, he gave us a verbal he presented a verbal offer where he said, okay, continue to build this and I will give you half the profit of what it makes. This was a net deal. It wasn't an EBITDA deal, which I didn't understand that. And, EBITDA, he was taking some little skimming. So if the EBITDA deal would have been better, so that was sort of scraping a little bit of what was really, I think, deserved by us,
Right.
What had happened, an example of that was he owned the real estate. So halfway through the 14 years we were there, he quadrupled the rent. So it was, going back to the point of that, okay, well, however you want to define EBITDA, that was unfair.
Right.
It was just unfair. Okay, so there was little
hedging. So he's playing the game, inflating certain expenses above standard industry so that he didn't have to.
Exactly, and those weren't in the detail. Those weren't in the details of the verbal agreement.
And was that naivete where he was taking advantage of inexperience on the front end
opposed
to being a protector?
It was. And when these changes were presented to us, any pushback resulted in a very serious emotional altercation.
Which only happened once?
Oh, it happened 100 times.
100 times.
Sure. So then, so it was really our voices were canceled.
So he was never a protector of his people.
He would never protect us from him.
Well, that's my point.
Sure.
And that's why you say predator, because he's not protecting you, but he's preying on either your innocence or naivete or lack of experience.
Or fear of him losing his fucking cool.
Wow. Wow. And so this was over a 14-year relationship before the true colors, the true identity came forward.
Sure.
So emotionally, it must have been worse than a divorce or a breakup. I can't imagine being in business with someone, because in retail, 7 days a week, 365.
Sure.
So this is your life and the wealth that you've built to take care of your new family, three girls and a bride.
Sure. And there's some interesting factors, because this is, when I look back, I'm like, wow, this was pretty methodical.
The word premeditated comes to mind.
Sure. And it was, there was a grooming process. He groomed us. So he had multiple business ventures, and he made us feel great about ourselves by saying everybody else is doing a awful job, and Dennis and Ronnie are the glaring example of what everybody else should be. And we puffed our chests up. It's like, we're everybody else is getting mistreated and preyed upon, but we're not, because we're doing the great job. And the preying upon is only because of lack of performance. We felt that was the grooming process. So we felt like, well, he mistreats these people. He doesn't pay. He doesn't live up to his word with pay and things as such. But he is with us because our performance is clearly superior, and their lack of performance is the reason for the lack of compensation and the different things. And you know, and it was methodical in the sense that like these people, you know, he would divide and conquer. So he would make you their enemy by calling you the shining star. So you wouldn't have the opportunity for them to give you the little wink, like, hey, be careful here. Because it was exactly. And you know, I didn't know what was going on. I just was feeling pretty good about myself. And you know, there were benefits that we were getting that the other management teams were not, you know, like trips and invitations to this person's home and gifts and things. And it was, you know, but what had happened was over time we're like, right, these are great, but this compensation package, when's it going to pay out? And what happened was it ultimately never paid out. But when we would ask the question of when it was going to pay out, it got real. It didn't, that wasn't, he didn't get emotional about that. He got manipulative. He's like, well, you know, we got to pay out at the right time because we have to take advantage of the tax laws. So paying out now, you're just going to pay it all in taxes. So for you and for us, we got to make sure that this payout happens strategically so you can maximize the tax benefits of it. And I'm like, well, how so?
Wow.
Well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you know, when, he painted this convoluted picture that I just didn't understand. And it was interesting because we were also very cloistered. We were kept within an ecosystem, and he really did not want you outside of it, including your family.
So you never had outside counsel, outside accounting, anyone doing?
Well, you weren't allowed to. And he created this. It was as I think back on this, I'm like, wow, a lot of things are coming back to me that I had forgotten about. He created this false sense of family, created displaced loyalty. He used words that were not really authentic, like told us he loved us. You know? I remember the first couple times I'm like, really? Huh? How come? For making you money? I mean, what? He weaponized kindness.
What a pariah. I mean.
Oh, sure.
And this has never caught up with him criminally. He's still walking in the community.
Not criminally, but financially he's had a couple payoffs.
And morally, he's probably bankrupt. But okay,
sure.
So we have this toxic, horrific experience.
And not to interrupt you, but sorry, I really pushed out the Ring of Fire thing.
We're going to come back to that because my question is, there was an inflection point or a seminal moment where this broke and you're like, it's over. What happened specifically? And then you're sitting in adversity or nomad's land.
Sure. We bought this condo. He fronted us money for it. And with the intent, this is really diabolical. With ill intent. So what he did was he said, okay, when you go to buy the condo, tell them we're buying it cash. Okay? So you have a very strong lever to negotiate because you're buying cash. It's speed. You know what I mean? We'll give you the cash tomorrow. So you have a sale tomorrow, and I'll give you the cash. So we did, and we used it. We used that lever effectively. We got a good deal, bought the condo, and he transferred the cash to pay for it. Then we found a home, and he did the same thing. He's like, yeah, offer cash. He goes, in fact, he even did the negotiating for us. He said, we'll give you cash. Did it again, paid cash. And it was about
Did you also own the condo at the same time?
We owned the condo and the home. And we were
whose name were the titles in?
Both my wife and myself.
So you had the titles.
We were titled,
Got it.
But he fronted cash for it. So it was really interesting. Actually, I forgot about this. This is great. And it might sound funny that I'm saying it's great, but I jumped through the Ring of Fire, so I'm good now. So he was into us for probably $500,000, okay, with fronting the cash for negotiation purposes for buying these 2 properties. Now, the plan was to sell him the condo property. He had just gotten divorced and he needed a place to live, and then we were going to move into the house. So he said, I'm just going to move in that condo property. And he's like, we'll switch the title on that some other time. So he moves in, and then he decides to move out, and then he's got another person he's grooming into this similar dynamic. And he says, I need you to transfer that title to me now so this other person, his name was Jamie, can buy it from me. And at that moment, we're like, okay, cool. Can we settle up on everything? Because this is getting a little convoluted. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, you have a debt to us of, I think it was $1.2 million at the time. You have a debt of $1.2 million to us.
Hold up. The debt is based on
a pay program.
Got it.
Pay program, the 50% of that.
Sure. Yep.
He calculated out to $1.2 million, but post all of this, I calculated it out to $2 million. Okay. Miscalculation, but
inflated expenses, rents.
Absolutely,
blah, blah, blah.
absolutely. So the number we were talking about in that particular moment was 1.2 million, and he was into us for $500,000 of fronted money for property. I said, well, let's just settle up. And he had said, at any time if you want to settle up, don't worry about what I'm advising you to do, which is settle up at a more opportune time to maximize your tax benefits on this. So I said, let's settle up now. I said, this is getting a little. Along
weird.
The way, we started to lose a little favor with him. We weren't the golden children as much as we used to be. We would go into meetings and he started to yell at us, and there was just they're getting a little rocky. It was a little interesting. We were like, okay, this is not feeling as, our confidence level isn't as great, and we started to get the sense that something might have been up. At that moment, we said, well, let's settle everything. You owe us 1.2. We're into you for 5, so let's cancel that out, and then pay up. And this was in a room, in a meeting, and he silently got up and walked out of the room, and he didn't talk to us for about a week.
For a week.
Right, and we were like, okay, what the fuck's up?
Wow.
So then the CEO of the parent company comes to us. He says, do me a favor, transfer the title for the condo to
this individual.
This individual, yes. I was going to use his name.
Now I'm glad you didn't.
Right. And I'm like, sure, but let's settle up. And he said, no, just do me a favor. Just please transfer this title.
No.
And I said, well, no, I want to settle up. He said, Dennis, just do me a favor. This is a favor to me. And I said,
no.
Why am I giving you a favor on this? You're the messenger, dude. And he said that will get very ugly for me. I'm like, ugly? I'm like, where'd that come from?
Wow.
What the fuck you talking about, ugly?
Wow.
He says, he was sweating. He's like, do me a favor.
So the lights are on now.
Yeah. So he got sent in. So he says, I promise you this will settle out. I promise you. Just please do it. I promise you it'll settle out. I said, what? Get what guarantee you giving me? Your promise? I'm like, what's that mean? I said, do you have the cash?
So now
personally?
Yeah.
He says, no. Where can I...
so this guy's a co-conspirator because you had a verbal agreement that someone else now is coming to acknowledge exists, is asking it will settle up. He's making an affirmative, acknowledging that something's owed from the predator, but is not guaranteeing anything and still trying to prey on what he thinks is naivete. This is just a dynamic that's like out of the movies.
Oh, definitely.
It's the Wolf of Wall Street on steroids. This is nuts.
Right. If I heard the story, I'd be fascinated by it. And I heard the story, and I'm now fascinated by it because of, time and, accomplishment.
So bring us forward.
I'm
anxious to see.
Thank you. So at that moment, it got super uncomfortable. Then we stopped having access to almost everybody.
In a corporate setting where you still have accountability to run the store.
Oh, sure, I was running the store, but it was got very uncomfortable at that moment.
How long did that go on for, this discomfort?
About a month.
So for a month, he left you on ice, like cold shoulder, no support.
Well, in that month period of time, the parent company CEO approached us a couple more times with the same request.
This guy's a co-conspirator.
Oh, absolutely.
So he knows exactly what's going down.
And he did not want to do it.
But he did it.
Yeah, he did it. He was tangled into it where he was told that if you don't make this happen, then a deal that we have is not going to happen. So he leveraged. Oh, yeah, sure.
So he's passing the pain down instead of having the moral fortitude to stand up and say, "This is wrong. This is predatory. I'm not going to be part of this." He doesn't have to whistle blow, but he just doesn't have to perpetuate it. He decides that I'm going to push the pain.
Well, he'd have to quit.
He would quit and find a new job.
Right.
So instead of letting his skills bring him to the promised land, he says, "I'm just going to make my problem someone else's problem."
Absolutely. Right.
Reprehensible.
Yes.
It's just reprehensible, Dennis.
Just as bad.
So you're in a situation now where your name's on 2 deeds. You're owed $1.2 million. You got a $500,000 note floating. There's $700K in the ether that you're now worried it's never going to materialize. You're a father, newlywed, and you're staring down over 14 years of service to a company and a career that may go up in smoke.
Correct.
Did you start drinking? Did you start working out? What'd you do?
As a matter of fact, I did start drinking. That's great observation.
I was just being flippant.
Yes. No, as a matter of fact, it was at work.
During the day?
Oh, yeah.
And you did
straight out of a bottle.
Did people know you were drinking at work? Did your wife?
Maybe. She did too.
Was she drinking?
Oh, yeah.
So both of you were drinking?
Yes.
Did you end up in rehab?
No.
You didn't drive and drink, did you?
No.
So are you getting hammered, or are you just taking the...
No, taking the edge off. I'm not much of a drinker.
No, I know you. Yeah. So, but I mean, this is the darkness. So this pain is causing you to go to a bottle because you can't find the light of how to redeem yourself, how to get through this.
Right. And it was putting a very serious strain on my marriage.
I would think it would.
Because what had happened was my wife said, I smelled this long before you did, and we should have gotten out before it got this deep.
And it's not the alcohol in your breath she was smelling. It was this predatorial relationship.
Sure. Definitely.
And so this individual knows that now you're drinking because I'm sure someone... No visibility.
He didn't know.
And no concern or care because he's not talking to you.
He was beside himself because he actually had a cash flow crunch at the moment too, which made him more desperate.
I can't keep up with this. This is straight out of a horror
show.
Show.
Oh, sure. I mean, when this turned into a lawsuit, and when I was telling the attorney the stories, like, because you couldn't make this shit up.
And what did the attorney say?
At first, he says, "Wow," he says, "we've got enough to nail this guy to the wall 10 times over." And then over time, he said, he says, "Doesn't really matter." He's like, you'll be out of money before we can prosecute this. Before we can, he's like, "So you're just going to have to say uncle."
Why didn't you take it to the court of public opinion?
I should have. I should have.
Embarrassed this individual publicly?
I fucked up royal. Yeah.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the attorney was very high profile, and he would want no part of that. And that was one of the reasons why, because I had brought it up. I'm like, I'll eat him alive publicly. And the attorney's like, I can't be part of that. And he was just very highly skilled. And I was just like, oh, man, I had to be careful.
Sure.
Here, when I was halfway in, I didn't want to restart the financial part of it, So it was tricky, but it was a mistake.
And so is that the Ring of Fire? Is this the nexus of all these collective things happening to the point where you're drinking from a bottle, your marriage is strained, and you're looking at a professional career that's dissolving?
The Ring of Fire is a philosophical premise that I use for a lot of things in life. Most things are only a ring of fire. They're not a tunnel of fire. It's the most uncomfortable things you could just jump through, and you're on the other side. You might get a little torched going through, but it's a quick jump. It's hot going through. Might get a little burnt, but the other side's not that far. And in this and the reason why this is a really tremendous example of that philosophical construct is this sounds fucking horrible, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me professionally in my life, maybe personally. I mean, the lessons and the mindset I had post this experience set me up for everything I have in my life.
Okay, so now we've gone from pain on the front in this ring where you're getting torched. How did you get to redemption and then resurrection to success? Was it a spiritual thing, or there's circumstances that, or help from an outside party? I mean, what took place? Because most people were frozen at that moment in time.
Right. Well, let me give you a little context before I answer that question. So, end result of all of this was a confrontation, and
with whom?
With the
Individual?
financial predator. Sure, the individual.
In person?
A verbal confrontation where my wife, Ronnie, I'm very proud of this moment. She confronted him and went all in and said, "We want our fucking money, and you better give it to us now, and we're not transferring anything to you. Shut the fuck up, and this is over, and if we can't do this, then, you know, this is an impasse, and it's going to get legal." And he said, "You bitch," and raised his fist to her. I grabbed him underneath the armpits and I threw him through a wall.
Did he press charges?
No, he didn't press charges. And it worked.
It worked.
Yes. Yeah, it worked. Yeah. So getting to what you asked about, you know,
redemption.
How I, you know, sort of realized the literally upside of going through an experience like that. You know, you asked me, was it spiritual? Not overtly. So I wouldn't say yes on that, but I wouldn't say completely that is out of that's not an absolute no, because at some point it was just very, I mean, I really became a person that I never was. I developed a level of confidence that could have had a little bit of a spiritual element, but I didn't really turn to religion or anything like that.
Okay.
Well, what was cool about it, if I wanted to kind of frame the process of getting there, was that it was a very, very, very powerful driver for somebody who grew up with a very difficult time focusing on a goal because of, diagnosed ADHD. And, you know me, I'm 60 years old and I probably have more energy than, 16-year-olds that
Sure.
I don't know how long I can sit here kind of thing. Well, I can sit here and talk to you, but, just physically, that. You know me, I can't sit still. So it was a very powerful driver in my ability to focus. At that moment, it was fight or flight. Pardon the phrase.
Appreciate that.
It was fight or flight, and it gave me the opportunity to really focus on getting through it. It was I had overspent on real estate and lifestyle at the moment, so the shortfall put me in a bad financial position.
So you're out, you have no income, you have no employment. You've thrown him through a wall. You guys are tit for tat. Who's going to go after whom, innuendos, so forth. What took it from this place of what I would call purgatory? You're suffering, you haven't come to whatever's next. What was that point, that inflection that said, okay, I'm going to build a thriving business that's going to make all of this nastiness in the rearview mirror forever?
I've never been a long-term goal guy. I just always felt like if I could win the day and string wins together, there'll be great long-term results. So so I guess maybe with your question is, it made me focus on getting through my financial concerns that had happened at the time. I, had to pay. It's just it was a big shortfall.
Right.
And I didn't want to borrow money from anybody.
Right. To that experience.
Sure. First focus was financial, and it was pretty cool. It was 2010 when this happened. I didn't open my retail business till around 2 years, maybe a year and a half later. And in the interim, I did tons of consulting work, and I mean like really hardcore, morning till night. Rebranded a gym, rebranded a technical run shop. Did a bunch of things. Did some work for some denim manufacturers, and in that year and a half time, I pulled myself out of that financial position. In that, those days are a blur to me because it was just, nose to the grindstone. Just,
So the consulting got you into a productive space where you were contributing and
my pile was getting bigger.
Got it.
Rather than shrinking.
So then you pivot from the point of not wanting to continue your consulting business, but going into retail. Why? Why retail? Why that venue?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to shorten it. My wife, who was my business partner, did not like doing consulting work for other companies. She had a little bit of discomfort with the process, and she didn't like. There was a very unlinear relationship to work and results. As you did some consulting work. If you're working on your own business, you can get it more one-to-one work results. Where, she just, in the consulting business, if you give them 10 constructs, it's like if they execute on one, that's fucking great.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that was just really unsatisfying for her. She didn't like it, and she got an itch to do retail again.
Nice.
And we had a really cool moment driving through a community that I grew up in. We drove by a really cool building, which was a barn, and that was the spiritual kind of part of it. Like, drove past the barn and I looked, it said for lease, and I looked at her and I got this really great feeling because I had worked in this building when I was a kid. It was a ski shop, and there was something magical about it. And now I own the building, and we've got a great business in there. And every time I walk in, we've been at it for almost 14 years. Every time I walk through the door, same magical feeling, which
nice,
sort of spiritual,
Yeah, karma train.
Sure. So the Ring of Fire is just so appropriate because at the moment when I thought I was going to have a shortfall of $1.2 million, and as I said, I calculated it out at a later date to 2 million. At that moment, I thought my life was over.
Yes.
So that was what the burn was. And as it turned out, it was super cool. I left with all the value. And the $1.2 million or two, whatever you want, wasn't the valuable piece of the equation. It was the skill, and it was the experience.
So it was the belief in yourself as well.
Absolutely. So there was the belief, okay, I got out, got through it, it burned. And then when I was able to not only get through it, when I was able to layer getting through it and have success.
You got your swag back.
It was swag, confidence, and it made me so much less risk averse. It was cool. I mean, I grew up lower middle class, Catholic family. Not only were you just playing defense with your finances, but you were playing defense at the church. It was like, it was a guilt controlled dynamic. My childhood,
Right.
And fucking shed a lot of that.
Wow. Okay.
It was cool, and that synced up with, me well. That's synced up with my personality type.
Yeah, so let me interrupt for a second. So if
Sure.
we had to distill this into wins and lessons learned, clearly we identified what the wins were at the start of this with financial success. if you had to break down lessons learned, 5 kernels of truth that we could impart upon the younger you and the listeners, what would that be?
I'm going to steal a phrase from a friend of mine. Beware of the lady in the red dress.
Sounds like something from The Matrix.
I think it might be. I think it might be because he references The Matrix all the time. It is. It has to be. So that's great. That's funny. Something's going to be shiny and bright, and they appear, when something appears to be that bright, it's not real.
Not real.
It's not real. Some things are too good to be true.
There you go.
Some things are too good to be true. And, I love, one of the things I really love using as a metaphor is a defensive end in football over pursuing. There's super athletic guys, and the offensive linemen know, rookie offensive or defensive linemen are generally pretty easy to defend because they're very young, very enthusiastic, and very athletic. And these crafty offensive linemen know how to use over pursuit as an advantage.
I'm tracking.
Yeah, and when you're young, you see the lady in the red dress and you just over pursue, and you just run down a hall that you don't belong running. It's a cautionary tale that for a personality type that's over eager, you want things to look like they're true when they're not.
I appreciate what you're sharing. It's sort of like quiet your cleverness, keep it back to basics. What are the vibrations? What energy you're getting? And then I always worry about when people like to create fractions where they're pitting one against the other.
Right.
And it's not collaborative, and you can't be your effortless self with others.
Right.
That's when I exit fast.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't have the tolerance for that.
But I think that what I just referenced, you could resonate with it very well. I think you've had some similar circumstances where your drive, eagerness, energy.
It was a blind spot.
Yes, absolutely.
But for best intentions, it wasn't a blind spot because of ignorance. It was a blind spot because, to your point, I was focused on winning the day or the month or the quarter or the year, or I had a target. And I don't agree entirely with what you shared with me. I would challenge that you do have short and long-term plans, as I've known you, but I've appreciated that you've broken them down to winning the day, because the day wins the week, that wins the month, that wins the quarter. So I've known, and I've seen that through your buying habits, your inventory management, all the fundamentals. But on a very personal level, and it's taken me a while to appreciate it, I value character and integrity and honesty and humanness. I think there's a lack of that today. And I just find it, I wasn't aware of the extent of the predatorial behaviors that were going on or what you were dealing with. I feel bad as a friend for not being more supportive. I didn't have an understanding of the depth of this dysfunction. Sure. And shame on the larger community, because there are multiple people complicit, in whatever reality is, right?
Right, and it was, sure, complicit, absolutely, but that was by design for, he...
Yeah, but hold up. It takes one spark to make a fire.
Oh, yeah.
It takes one person to do what Ronnie did and you did.
Right.
To stand up and say, I'm not signing papers to be silent, to be paid off, or I'm not divorcing you, or I'm not doing this, that, or the other thing, but this behavior needs to stop here and now before you damage others.
Right.
And that's part of, a wishful world where everyone's looking out for others, not the me generation.
Sure.
But I appreciate where you're coming from, and what a remarkable story when we lean into fight or flight, challenge, the ring of fire, redemption and resurrection, because your success today is remarkable. You're setting precedents on user experience, social media content, customer service, inventory optimization, trialing and error with new print techniques. I see it all.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. It doesn't feel that way because
No, it is. And I'm grateful for use of this amazing studio, our executive producer, Anna, who's hiding behind the scenes, but she's a rock star, and she'll be front and center in a moment. But Brother D, live.
Thank you.
From the hidden space.
Thanks. It's telling the story is almost spiritual. When it's funny because I'm that question was good. I like the question because I never really considered it. That I never really considered what was there like some kind of a spiritual healing, and truly it's it might not be the perfect terminology, but man, there really is some interesting coincidences, I guess, we'll give it a floor, the floor of that, absolutely some coincidences that don't make sense.
100%.
For instance, I'm telling this story to you, but in the moment when that situation was unfolding or unraveling, I'd called you to talk about it.
I remember that.
And you had a very, very similar circumstance unfolding at the same time.
Same time. A little different. I mean, I was 9 years, not 14
sure.
into a relationship, but
yeah,
the same.
But the fact that it was happening to us,
it blows my mind.
Right.
We were talking about this last
night.
So
what word would you use for that? Coincidence? Would you get a little stronger?
I would get stronger. Why would be the first question. Why does this happen?
I have a good answer. Or I have one of the reasons.
Yes.
Happens to guys like us because a little bit of over pursuit, and that's what's brought us together is the energy match. It's an energy match, man.
Yeah, I know.
It is. Sunday night, we're getting at it.
We're jamming at it, making phone calls, bringing in colleagues, talk about this, that, and the other.
Sorry to bother you on a Sunday evening, but we need some really detailed information about screen printing. Thank you.
Forget about the Maryland game. Forget about March Madness. We need some help on DTF.
And your wife is pissed. Deal with it later.
Right. See you tomorrow night. Got a flight to catch.
Oh, great.
This has been awesome, man. I love the setup.
Thank you. It's comfortable. Yeah.
And thank you, brother.
Thank you.
This was fun, man. I enjoyed it.